Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 214 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 70 of A Storm of Swords, which is Tyrion 10.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes and provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. We had a huge change in weather today, or yesterday, I guess. It had been in the 80s. We are in November now. It had been in the 80s all week, and then poor Halloween trick-or-treaters. It rained most of Halloween here, and the temperature dropped about 30 to 40 degrees.
It got very cold. Yeah.
But I did something this past weekend. Stacy and I took Molly and two of her friends to Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia. Have you ever been there?
I haven't, but for our international listeners, it's an amusement park. With rides.
And haunted houses
Not my cup of tea.
No.
Just FYI.
And, increasingly as I get older, more and more reasons why it's not my cup of tea as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's about 3 hours from us. And so our plan was we're going to wake up before 6 a.m., leave the house by 7 a.m., get there by 10 a.m. when the park opens. It's right now this time of year and ended this past weekend. It's called Hallow Scream. They have a lot of Halloween scary things, and at night there's 5 haunted houses and all that jazz. Well, so of course things didn't go to plan. We didn't leave at 7. We left at 7:45. We didn't get there at 10. We got there at 11:30. So you know how things go like that. But the very first thing we do when we get there is we go on this roller coaster called Verbolten. I've been on it several times. I've been to this park like 3 or 4 times now. That was it. I was done for the day. First thing I did, I was like, okay, I'm done. I just can't handle it anymore.
But you had handled it in the past.
With less and less success each time I've been there. So in this time I was like, I just can't do roller coasters anymore. I'm done.
I'm just cowardly. I'm just afraid of them. I don't like the feeling. It's just too much for me. And yet, my wife and son, they both love them. They have no problems with them at all.
Yeah? Oh, man. Well, more power to Carson, because I used to like them just fine when I was younger. And then, I get off the ride. I've got a headache. I've got a stomach ache. I feel like I have whiplash. And I was like, I'm paying for this. Why am I paying for this? So the only two things, so Stacy and I then, that was about noon. We left at 9 p.m. So Stacy and I had 9 hours to kill at that park. And the two other rides we rode was the little sky gondola thing that, it takes you across the park.
I'm afraid of that too, but yeah.
And the little train that takes you around the grounds. So we scaled it back quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Probably should have gone into like the Kiddie Land. Enjoyed some rides there.
Though the place, I've been to a place, I don't know where it is, other direction from where you went, which has rides, but it also has a water park. And I have no problem with water rides. I can do any kind of water ride, which is weird because they're probably more dangerous because you're not confined. You're sort of relying on, you know what I mean? You can bounce out of your seat and things. But for some reason, I find water rides quite fun. Well, I say that, but it's probably been 12 years since I've done one.
Well, you might be surprised.
Yes.
The last time I rode a roller coaster was we took Ethan to Busch Gardens for his 16th birthday. He is 23 now, so it had been a good long while, and apparently I've aged without realizing it when it comes to tolerance for roller coasters.
So I have a final story from my trip to England, a final story for the podcast. There's a lot more stories waiting for the sustainer call. But I went to a party in London and I spoke to some people from London. And London's a different world. London's a different world from the rest of the UK.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a huge city and like terribly congested, and it has different rules and it's a different world to the rest of the UK.
Sure.
And it's a different world to the rest of the world too. But one example, and it was kind of a funny story. So, I don't know if this is common to the United States, but it's certainly around where we live. The schools, near the schools, you'll see signs saying that the speed limit is reduced during certain periods of time.
Yes. Right.
And that's common in the United States, I guess, yeah?
As far as I know, it is.
Right. In London, they have the same idea, but they actually close the roads. The roads are closed during school drop-off and pickup time.
Oh, wow. That would be challenging for me, being that I live so close to the school. I would be able to leave or come home.
Yes. I mean, presumably which roads are closed maybe depends on the sort of like the importance of that road. But yes, I mean, I get what you're saying. So this couple was telling me that one of them had to get a COVID booster. And London, it's very difficult to park. So they went together in their car, and the other one drove around while one was getting...
And then they swapped out?
No, only one of them was getting the shot.
Oh, okay.
But they were saying that the school where they live, the roads actually have a barrier which closes, so there's no way you can make a mistake.
Yeah, it's really closed.
Right. Where they were getting the shot, the roads are just closed, and there's a sign saying the road is closed between these times, but it's just a sign. And if you don't notice it, you drive past it and you get a hefty fine.
Oh.
You don't have to be noticed doing it. The camera gets you.
Oh, no.
Well, it took them a little bit longer than expected to get the shot, and this person driving did 4 rotations.
Oh,
and
no.
each time they went through,
my goodness.
they got another $150 fine for each time.
Oh, wow. That is hefty. That is an expensive booster right there.
Oh, my God. I couldn't believe it. I was like, couldn't you just appeal? Like, say, look, I'm an idiot, but I didn't mean to be an idiot 4 times in one day.
Right. Should there be like some sort of limit to how often you can be fined for the same crime? Doesn't double jeopardy come into play here at some point? You can't keep getting me for the same crime.
Yeah. But sir, there are different timestamps on these pictures. Dang it.
Oh no, that is something there.
That's a nightmare. Mm.
Well, I am sorry to hear that. For that, they're a couple, right? So they're splitting the fine, I guess.
Yes, there was I believe there was some sort of holding it over the other one. You know?
I'm sure. Yes.
In both directions. See what I paid to help you out, and also see what an idiot you are for driving past that road closed sign 4 times.
Yes, I could definitely see that happening.
All right, well, anyway, let's get down to business. How did we leave Tyrion Lannister? Last we saw of Tyrion, he was rapidly losing the trial in which he stood accused of the murder of his nephew, King Joffrey Lanathian, as I've decided to call him from now on.
All right.
But at the darkest hour, an olive branch, Oberyn Martell, is willing to be his champion and might be one of the very few people in the realm capable of defeating Gregor the Mountain Clegane. We may find out. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay, I sure hope we find out here. Tyrion wakes.
I mean, it could be found. It could. We don't know that it's going to go to this yet.
Right.
Although I have to say, actually, starting the discussion before we read this, I thought that would be I thought that there would be no more trial because he's got this. Right. He's not winning the trial.
It certainly wasn't looking good. That's for sure.
But that's not how this chapter goes. Why don't you start and tell us?
All right. Here's how it goes. So Tyrion wakes and contemplates his 3 options: see the trial out. Simon says bad idea. Confess and take the black, or call for a trial by combat with Prince Oberyn Martell as his champion, which is one Simon seems like he would endorse. None of them instill him with a great deal of confidence. After today's final witness, he could mount his defense, possibly blaming Sansa or Sir, but even Pod struggles when asked if he thinks Tyrion's guilty or innocent.
He figures he could do well in the Night's Watch, but there's that whole vow of celibacy thing. On top of the celibacy, it's pretty cold at the Wall. But the biggest obstacle is that he'd have to confess to murdering his nephew, giving Cersei and the trial spectators what they want. Finally, he could trust in Oberyn Martell to defeat the Mountain in single combat, but it's not exactly a sure thing.
No more time for pondering. He's called to the throne room for the final witness's testimony. Shae is led in, and Tyrion goes cold. At first,
I did too, Mackelly. You did it. You, even though I knew who it was, and I was reading it at the same time you read it, my heart went cold too.
At first, he blames Varys. Tyrion does. I'm not sure about Simon. For outing her. But then he sees the truth. Of course they'd question Sansa's maids. Tyrion's only solace is that Shae knows nothing that can hurt Tyrion.
They plotted it together, the imp and Lady Sansa. Shae goes on to tell how she may not know anything that could hurt Tyrion, but she can say things that will hurt Tyrion.
Right.
Shae goes on to tell how Tyrion planned to kill his family and become king. She then reveals that she was his whore. She says Tyrion used her mercilessly, making her do horrible things and insisting that she call him names like my giant of Lannister.
This causes an eruption of laughter throughout the courtroom. Tyrion's had enough. He says he'll confess if they shut this liar up. However, rather than confess to the murder, Tyrion says he's simply guilty of being born a dwarf. Of Joff's murder, he's innocent, but now he wishes he had done it, since he'll clearly get no justice here. Instead, he'll appeal to the gods. He demands a trial by combat.
Cersei pipes up in a gleeful voice that the Mountain, Gregor Clegane, will be her champion. To everyone's, except Tyrion's, surprise, Oberyn Martell stands up to champion Tyrion. A fuming Tywin says the battle will take place tomorrow. That night, Tyrion ponders all the possible complications he's created for his father. If Oberyn wins, Mace Tyrell will be highly displeased. If the Mountain wins, Doran Martell might just crown Myrcella queen.
The next morning, Tyrion attends his champion. Oberyn seems calm and relaxed. He suggests that after he wins, that Tyrion and Lady Sansa accompany him back to Dorne to counsel Queen Myrcella. He then tells Tyrion that his and Elya's visit to Casterly Rock years ago wasn't only to see the deformed monster baby Tyrion was said to be. It was actually the final leg of a marriage tour. Oberyn's and Tyrion's mothers had planned to marry their children to each other. However, the plan died with Joanna. Tywin rejected either Martell child marrying either one of his twins.
It's funny you said that, because Joanna's wish did come true. Her children did marry each other. So, anyway.
I don't think that's what she had in mind.
Yeah, half right. The battle would take place in the outer ward. The masses turned up for the spectacle. The Mountain in his plate mail loomed huge over the lightly armoured Oberyn. Oberyn introduces himself as Elia Martell's brother. The name means nothing to the Mountain. Oberyn reminds him, the Princess of Dawn, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her children. A refrain he repeats over and over again as he dances away from the Mountain slashes with his huge greatsword.
Eventually, the sun breaks through the clouds. Gregor puts his back to it, but Oberyn uses his shiny metal shield to reflect the light into the Mountain's eyes. It's then that Oberyn lands his first strike in Gregor's armpit, then behind his knee, which brings the big man down. Oberyn drives his spear through Gregor's gut, breaking the spear.
Yes! Tyrion wins!
He's gonna do it!
Oh, there's just a little bit more. 1 second.
Oh, whoops.
Oberyn puts his foot on Gregor's chest. Seems a little close to the as yet not dead Gregor, but let's keep going.
Yep.
Holding the man's great sword over him, he insists the Mountain say Elya's name before he dies. However, in that moment, the Mountain grabs Oberyn and pins him to his chest in a bear hug. It's then that Gregor speaks. He remembers Elya. He killed her whelp, then he raped her, then he smashed her head in, like this. The Mountain crushes Oberyn's head with his fists. Elaria Sand wails next to Tyrion. Tyrion retches up his breakfast before being led, not to his tower cell, but to a black cell.
Whew. Have we ever had... I guess the Red Wedding maybe was a similarly just dripping with anticipation and drama summary.
Yeah. This is, I mean, the Red Wedding's a great chapter, but this is my absolute favourite chapter of the book. It's so, because I forgot that it contained the sort of like the element of the trial, which was so poignant. And so
I know,
I forgot
right?
that was part, I assumed the trial was confined to one chapter and then the fight would be in another chapter, but actually you get both aspects of it right here.
Yes. It is, by the time you get to the end of the chapter, you forget about the whole Shae
exactly
testimony
thing. It's such a momentous moment, you know.
Yes.
But again, credit to George Martin, because it is terrific storytelling, and you have to be a brave writer to create a character as interesting and vibrant as Oberyn Martell, and then kill him off within half a book.
Yeah, he was really only featured in like 3 chapters. The one when he arrived, the one before the wedding, and this.
But in that time, he just was infused with life. You know, he was just an interesting addition to the book. And any other writer, myself included, would give my audience what they want. You and I were thrilled when he stuck that spear through Mountain's belly. We were like, "Thank God, Tyrion's going to survive." Give us what we want, George. Don't turn the tables on us. But he does, because he's quite the writer.
And, you know, he set that all up with Ned Stark's beheading. You know, it taught us to never expect what we're hoping for.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. But it's such a hard thing to kill off a character.
Oh, right.
Especially to kill off a character that you yourself must be interested in. You know, he must have been like, where could Oberyn's story go? You know, it'd be fascinating to do this, and this with Oberyn, you know.
Yeah.
For Oberyn to take Tyrion to Dawn.
Right, yes.
And see what they could hatch there. But
there's a ton of storylines with him.
Exactly. You closed it off forever by doing this.
Yeah.
You can never go back to that.
Right. It's a brave move by George Martin.
Yeah, indeed. But, hey, it's a great book. If he hadn't done things like that, it wouldn't be a great book.
Yes. Fair point. Very fair point. So as far as the story goes, Tyrion, the first thing Tyrion's doing when we check in on him, he wakes up and he's thinking about his 3 options. Finish out the trial, mount his own defense, take the Black, head to the Night's Watch, or trial by combat with Oberyn Martell. And he's considering taking the Black and what benefits there might be. And he thinks clearly he won't be a ranger. But when he visited with Mormont, when he had that dinner with him, or it was after dinner, I guess, and Tyrion 3 of a Game of Thrones, Mormont pretty much said, hey, you could do well here. We need smart people on the wall. And, you know, he's right. I think he could rise high in the Night's Watch, but I think a lot would be dependent on who the Lord Commander is.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely would. He'd be successful because they need people. I mean, just the work he did on the drains in Casterly Rock, you know,
right.
That's good. That is good grounding for what's needed at the wall.
Yes,
but
right.
He also was raised wealthy, pampered, and unconstrained by rules.
I see your point. Yes, it would be a big adjustment.
Exactly, it would be hard for him to get used to the privations of being a member of the Night's Watch, even though he would be successful at it for sure.
Yeah, of course, he doesn't know what's happening up there right now. If Slint really does take command permanently of Castle Black, that would be about the worst possible situation for Tyrion. If he goes through the whole thing, confesses to a crime he didn't commit, gets sent to the Night's Watch, arrives, and there's Janos Slint, who he stripped of all of Janos's titles and positions and sent there. He'd probably end up dead.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's indicative of the nature of how bad Janos Slint would be. That when you said Tyrion doesn't know what's going on at the wall, I thought you meant the invasion by 100,000 rabid wildlings.
There's that too.
Never mind that. This guy who really hates him is in charge.
Yeah, there's that. That was overshadowed by the arrival of Janos Slint.
So, I did. You mentioned this, but Pod can't bring himself to say that he thinks Tyrion is innocent. Which, I mean, Pod's a character, and he stutters and he doesn't know what to say. But it seems to me that the trial's going against Tyrion. But if you're Tyrion's friend, you wouldn't have heard anything in the trial that would make you believe what you can't possibly believe, because Tyrion would. I don't know. It just struck me as odd.
There's been so many lies that certainly Pod would say, nope, that's not how that happened.
Exactly.
That's a lie, and that is a lie.
He witnessed many of yeah, that's right.
Right.
And he knows, I mean, to be fair, it was before Shae's testimony, but he knows that much of Shae's testimony was not true.
Right. Yeah. But
anyway,
but the fact that even Pod is struggling with saying, I think you're innocent, makes it certainly feel like it's not likely that he'll be acquitted based on the trial.
And mounting a defense, if Pod doesn't believe you before you mount your defense, and your defense consists of, I really didn't do this.
I don't.
I got nothing else. I just didn't do it. There was a comedy duo in England, and they had characters who were having an argument once, and they were kind of like slightly dumb characters, and the argument consisted of, you did, and the other one said, I never, and they repeated that like 12 times, and it was increasingly funny as they went on. I never! And just imagine Tyrion doing that.
Yeah.
That's all he's got.
And Cersei going, you did.
You did! I never!
Yeah, he's an awfully smart guy for that to be his whole defense. I don't know the rules exactly of the trial and the trial rules in Westeros, but you would think he'd be able to call each person that the prosecution brought up and cross-examine and say, put holes in their story.
That's his problem. The rules seem to have worked against him, because if he'd been given the right to cross-examine, he could have at least put some holes in the prosecution's case. But since every witness in the land is on the prosecution side, he has no witnesses to call.
Yeah, unless he calls them back up and says what happened. They're lying. So why would they tell the truth when Tyrion says, okay, now tell the truth?
Because at least he can at least make the accusations that he wasn't allowed to make while they were lying,
Yes. That is true.
But you're right. But it just feels like he's not allowed to do that. And if he's not allowed to do that, then he just doesn't have anything. I mean, the only way to prove your innocence is to point to the real killer, and he doesn't have any clue who that is.
Yeah, that is the problem in this type of environment here.
But to Shae.
Yes, to Shae. No.
Oh, the betrayal. I've always been Shae's biggest apologist throughout. I have truly believed, even knowing where this was headed, I've always believed that she was not just in this for the transaction of it, that she was genuinely in love with Tyrion. But this infamy that she's created here is just unforgivable. Oh.
Yeah. Well, one thing we learned for sure is that she's a heck of an actress, because she put on quite a performance here. So
where did she put on the performance, Tyrion? I called you Tyrion then.
During her testimony, put on quite the performance.
That was the performance, not the months and months she spent with Tyrion.
Well, my point is, we see that she can be quite the skilled actor when need be. So because she put on this incredible performance, emotional performance here, it makes me feel like, yes, she had the capability of putting on a performance this whole time with Tyrion as well.
Don't say it. I hate it when you make a good logical point that I don't want to hear. But I will say, let's give her a tiny break, because Tyrion's right. She would have been questioned. As Lady Sansa's handmaiden, she would have been questioned by someone from Team Cersei, who would have said, did you hear Tyrion and Sansa plotting against Joffrey? And as a servant, she's got very little option but to say, yes, I did hear them saying that, because that's what would be expected of her.
Right. Although the other one wasn't up there. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. The other maid. Yeah, but
Yeah.
First of all, we knew that Cersei and Tywin both they both mentioned to Jaime when Jaime returned that they had Sansa's maids, and both mentioned questioning them. So it seems like they both were planning on questioning them. So my question is, who got to Shae first? Because I think who got to Shae first would have a lot to do with how things unfold and what answers she gives.
Between who again?
Tywin and Cersei. They both told Jaime, they both said it, I have Sansa's maids, and I'm going to question them. If Tywin gets to them first, you'd think he wants the truth, not to threaten and bribe her to tell stories. So if he got to her first, you would think he would get honest answers.
So you think only Cersei is tipping the scales of justice here? You don't think Tywin is?
Why would Tywin, though? Because he wants Tyrion to take the black? He's trying to force him into taking the black?
Because he'd be happy to see him dead?
Yeah, I guess. But why offer the... He is still his son, though, right? I mean, like, he has to have some inkling that Tyrion did not do this. He's a smart man. I would think he's thinking, no, Tyrion, he would have planned it better if he was going to do this. He wouldn't have done it in front of everyone like that.
That's true, but Tywin has shown nothing to me that made me think he was trying to give Tyrion a fair crack here.
Oh, yes. I agree. I agree with that.
But it's a good point. I mean, maybe they got one each, and he got the other one, and the other one said, I didn't hear anything, and he said, all right, you're free to go.
Maybe.
And Cersei happened to get Shae, and she went, whoa, not only are you telling me what I want to hear, but you're telling me some juicy stuff on top of that. Fantastic. Exactly.
Yeah, well, like you just said, there are some things in her testimony that Cersei would have had absolutely no way of knowing about. You know,
and that's why Shae's betrayal is so devastating.
Yes.
Because if she went up there and said, we were lovers, you could even mention that. We were lovers. He plotted with Sansa, but he treated me kindly. That would be enough. That would be what Cersei wants to hear.
Right.
It would condemn Tyrion, but he would hear it and he would say, I understand why you're saying that. Sansa's gone. I'm doomed.
Right.
You've got to cover your backside.
Yeah.
But she doesn't say that. She spills his secrets.
And lies.
And betrays the love. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
We all remember the chapter in the Dragon Skull room where, you know, he went down there in the middle of the night and they had their relations and they laid there in each other's arms. And that was when, remember the thoughts he had at the end of that chapter. He was thinking back about how Varys said that Varys will give up Shae if asked directly by the queen. And Tyrion decided it was too dangerous for Shae. He was going to marry her off to Sir Talad the Tall. But that was the morning of the wedding. So this whole thing has been all part of up until the trial began, all part of the same long day ending in the feast. So he had no opportunity to cut ties with Shae. But Shae spun that meeting as him, coercing her down there, forcing her down there, and raping her, and telling her that he's going to kill all of his family and become king, and then the Giant of Lannister thing was just totally unnecessary. She didn't need to bring that up. That didn't accomplish anything but embarrassing Tyrion.
And delighting the crowd.
And delighting the crowd.
They're the most spineless, fickle, horrible people in the world. Because, again, all the time Tyrion is thinking, you people owe me. And what am I getting? I'm getting scorn for the fact that I had a paid lover.
Yeah. But maybe it wasn't as... Maybe the interaction with Cersei was a little more unpleasant. Maybe there was some type of torture or threat involved. And, if a professional torturer might have ways of getting details out, like any embarrassing details about your relationship that you want to give up before I pull your fingernail out. Something like that.
But why torture her? I mean, you just say, Cersei could do this without any torture. You say to the servant, you heard Sansa and Tyrion plotting against Joffrey, didn't you?
Right. And
then you don't even have to go down the path
yes.
of you were lovers with him.
Yeah,
I
agree.
They would never ask that question. Only Shae could volunteer that information.
Right. And that is what I think Tyrion thinks happened, because he thinks, oh, you'll get whatever it was you asked for from Cersei, but then he's going to have you servicing the gold cloaks within a fortnight or something like that. So
yeah. The only other explanation, of course, is Varys. If Varys gave Shae up to Cersei, then she would then know, not only have I got a servant who will testify that they plotted, but I also have his lover, and I can turn that into something way more salacious and fun for the crowd.
Yes. And that story about Shae being betrothed to a squire and that she met Tyrion at the Battle of the Green Fork, and the squire
we didn't
dying.
mention that. Yeah, we didn't mention that in the recap, but she said in her testimony that she was betrothed. He died at the Battle of the Green Fork, and then Tyrion's men kidnapped her,
forcefully brought her to Tyrion, and that felt to me entirely meant to inflict damage to Tyrion's relationship with Tywin, because Tywin specifically told him not to take her to King's Landing when he sent him to be Hand of the King.
Oh. Just the bringing up of the fact that they started together at the Green Fork,
yes.
not the dishonest backstory, but the fact that she met him at the Green Fork.
I think that backstory was meant to give her more credibility.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Tyrion is unsure if he sees shame or fear in Shae's eyes. We didn't see her eyes, so we'll have to trust him on that, I guess.
I wish he could detect a hint of sorrow. That would be handy. That would make me feel a little bit better.
Right. Yeah, that was a rough one.
This is the thing. I feel betrayed because it's she just didn't have to do it this badly. She probably had to do it, and he probably would have understood, but she just salted the wound so horribly.
Oh, so horribly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So then Tyrion mounts the only real defense he ever mounts here, which is that he says, I'm guilty, so everything can stop and they all listen to him now, but he's guilty of being the dwarf son of Tywin Lannister, and that's his only crime. And Tywin denies it, but there's definitely a part of it that's true. But as you say, you still think that Tywin wants the best for Tyrion.
I think he would prefer not to execute him. I don't think it's a good look for your family if you execute your son for killing your nephew. But he begins this chapter contemplating his three options: defend himself, take the black, trial by combat. And I felt like Shae's testimony convinced him option one is off the table. There was no defending himself at this point. And he was probably too angry and embarrassed for being mocked to confess to the crime he didn't commit, which would have been the take the black part.
Right. Leaving him only one choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, this, speaking of our discussion about what Tywin wants here, why was he so angry about his trial by combat? He was turned purple.
Is it because he knows he'll lose? Is it because he knows that it's going to be Sandor Gregor Clegane, therefore defeat is certain, and therefore there's nothing he can do to save Tyrion?
I think that's possible. Definitely think that's possible. I think based on his disappointment with the trial by combat, I think he would have gone through with his Night's Watch.
Oh, promise.
Plan. Yes.
Right.
Because he thought that's what he was about to get. Tyrion says, shut her up and I'll give you my confession. So, although I worry Cersei would have paid someone to have him killed on the wall. Of course, Jaina Slint would have probably had him killed anyway.
Jaina Slint kills him just before the Raven arrives.
Yes. He would be like, oh, I'm one step ahead of you there.
Yeah. So the morning of the combat, Tyrion gets a lot of freedom to sort of walk around as the accused of regicide
right
killer. I guess he's very recognizable. It'd be hard for him to sneak off, but
true.
He does learn more from Oberyn Martell about Oberyn's earlier trip to Casterly Rock when Tyrion was a baby. It wasn't just to see Tyrion, which was definitely part of it, but it was to arrange weddings. Their mothers had been firm friends together when they were young, and had she, Joanna Lannister, survived Tyrion's birth, then Oberyn and Cersei and Jaime and Elia would have been married or would have been betrothed at that point.
At least one of the pairs, I think, was the plan.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, if they're that good friends, I mean, it's certainly a strong alliance for the Lannisters.
Sure.
And in that period, there was no pretensions of the throne.
Right.
Because the Targaryens were in charge. But her death put all the cards into Tywin's hands, and he was not friends with do you know what Oberyn's mother's name was?
They never say, just the Princess of Dorne. Mrs.
Martell. And Tywin's ambitions were a notch above Dorne. So, but it's an interesting point to me, because Tywin manages to offend them in a way that Oberyn still smarts at it to this day. And he was only a child himself then, right? He was just a teenager, I think, at the time.
Yeah, right.
But he still smarts about it now that Tywin was so dismissive of their appeal.
Uh-huh.
And so Tywin's supposed to be a smart strategist, but he's offending one of the 7 houses of Westeros.
Right.
To the point where that guy would go to battle to defend the person who killed Tywin's nephew.
Yeah, of course, Elia's death.
I know that's the biggest single thing, but that plays into it as well, because Elia marrying into the Targaryen family put her a notch above what Tywin was able to achieve.
Yeah, well, Elia ended up with the marriage that Tywin wanted for Cersei, which was Rhaegar Targaryen.
And then he apparently, seemingly, ordered Elia's murder, which feels like he was seeking vengeance against the Martells, not just the Targaryens, for overreaching their station. And that, oh man, I'm with Oberyn.
Well,
I could kill the Mountain myself.
Oberyn thinks that Tywin had Elia killed because she got Rhaegar and Cersei didn't. But Tywin told, I think it was Tyrion. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Tyrion, that Rhaegar killed her because Tywin didn't specify not to kill her.
Not to kill her, but that's Tywin covering himself again.
Could be,
very
well could be.
I don't believe a word he says. I think the Mountain is a psychopathic lunatic, but I also think he's a trained dog, and he does what Tywin tells him.
I agree. Yeah, there's a few ifs here in this marriage journey story. They began their journey while Joanna was still alive. They found out about her death while they were in Old Town. So maybe if they had gone straight to Casterly Rock, they might have gotten there before she died, and while she was pregnant with Tyrion, and sealed this kind of marriage pact with at least one of the pairs.
But I bet as friends, they probably knew, and so she wanted to arrive after the baby was born so they could coo over the baby together. So
very possible, yes. And of course, if Tywin had agreed to either of the betrothals, Jaime and Cersei may have ended up in different kingdoms. Jaime doesn't serve in the Kingsguard, and Tywin still has his heir and children, as future heirs. But didn't happen that way, so...
And then the fight, it's absolutely epic. Even so, rereading it, several times for this, I even knowing the outcome, I was on the edge of my seat on the first read through of this.
It was so good.
The device of Oberyn repeating the charge against the Mountain at every turn is just, it's masterful. And the Mountain you don't hear much of the Mountain's reaction, but it's making his blood boil.
Yes.
He's getting more and more angry about it.
I think the only comment he makes is, "Shut up, you're giving me a headache."
Right.
My head hurts. Yeah, the refrain over and over again reminded me a bit of Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. "My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Over and over again. It kind of reminded me of that. So,
it also makes you realize what a consummate fighter Oberyn was, because Oberyn's fighting an absolutely fearsome opponent, and he's able to not only keep him at arm's reach, but mock and rile him constantly throughout that.
Right.
If I was in a sword fight with, I mean, first of all, I'd be running as fast as I could. There'd be no talking. But at the same time, the concentration levels to be able to, to rib him while you're fighting is incredible.
After he had wine that morning.
I know. But again, he's definitely using poison, right? Because when he catches, I think he shows the spear to Tyrion and he says, "Oh, be careful with that," because I think we know that he's used to using poison. And indeed, the mountain goes down quite easily when he gets the wound in the armpit and the knee, right? Which, if I was speared in the armpit and the knee, I would fall down too. But this is the mountain who killed someone after being speared through the belly. So,
yeah. Yes, it is. They certainly allude to the fact that there's something going on with the point of that spear because it's oily, it's wet, and Oberyn makes a point of telling Tyrion, "Do not touch that." Right. And Oberyn also has experience with poison. He studied at the Citadel. He went over into the free cities of Essos and learned about poison. And he poisoned a man in that duel when he was a young man. So he poisoned his blade and killed the man that way. So he's definitely got there's some history there. But there's a line, it's a very innocuous line at the beginning of the scene that leads to the battle. When Tyrion and Oberyn are walking out into the outer ward together. And the line is something about the sun trying to break through the clouds. And it felt like possibly a little bit of foreshadowing or foresunning on you see what I did there? On Oberyn's plans, because part of his plan was to wear this shiny, very shiny light armor and had basically a mirror for his shield. It was a lot of really shiny metals. And when the sun finally does break out, he uses it to he uses the reflection of the sun to blind Gregor.
But Tyrion even notices that Gregor, whilst not the sharpest tool in the shed, just has fighter's instincts, because as soon as the sun does come out, he gets his back to the sun.
Yes.
And given the size of the man, Oberyn is lucky to find the sun in the shadow of the mountain.
That is very true. So do you remember in Sansa 6, which was the last Sansa chapter that we just had?
Is this a test?
We discussed the Bran 3 of A Game of Thrones dream, the falling dream. The falling dream. I don't know if that came out clearly. Anyway, we mentioned Littlefinger being a possibility for the stone giant that loomed over everyone in King's Landing. Well, if you remember, that part of the dream goes that all around his family, Bran saw shadows, and one of them was as dark as ash with the terrible face of a hound. That seems an awful lot like the hound.
Like the hound.
The next shadow was armor as gold and beautiful as the sun. And some people think that alludes to this Oberyn right here in this fight. He's got the scales of gleaming copper, the shiny metal shield that he uses as a weapon to shine the light of the sun into Gregor's eyes. The sigil of the Martells is a sun with a spear. And on his bright metal shield is the Martell sigil in shiny metals. So some people think that it was a foreshadowing of this.
Right, but my question about that is they don't seem to have... The dream felt like, who are the enemies of the Starks?
Right.
And this doesn't seem to fit. The description seems to fit, I agree, but it doesn't seem to fit that Oberyn was in any way a rival to the Starks or an enemy of the Starks.
I agree with you. I definitely feel more like it's a Jaime Lannister, Tywin Lannister situation.
Right. Just one last thing about the repeated charge. My sister earlier, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her children, what have you. I think the payoff when Clegane turns the tables on Oberyn at the end, when after saying almost nothing for the whole fight, he then repeats the charge back and admits to all of it as he kills Oberyn, is just so good. And I gotta wonder if George Martin weighed up the simply restating it, but as I did this, I did this, I did this. But instead, the Mountain adds horribleness to it. He explains, he's offensive and, calls her children whelps.
Right.
And he adds the sort of brutality of what he did. And it's just like, it was the right choice, but oh my God, stomach lurching. Like riding that roller coaster.
Yeah, I was actually thinking when I was listening to this chapter yesterday, and it was at that part, and the Mountain is reeling off the things. I killed her whelp, and while he's doing it, he punches Oberyn in the face and just makes splinters of his teeth, and then he's crushing his skull. And I'm wondering, like, is Oberyn even hearing this anymore, or is he passed out from the pain, or dealing with the fact that his head is getting crushed and his teeth have been knocked out?
Spitting chiclets, he says, "I knew it."
Why did he knew he poisoned him. Just keep him on the ground. He couldn't get up. He was pinned to the ground because the spear went right through him. Just wait 5 minutes.
But then, so now let's move on.
Okay.
Trial by combat, the winner here is clearly the Mountain, except the Mountain is going to die. He's got a spear straight through him. Modern medicine is not going to reach him in time for another 2,000 years or so. And he's going to die. So what are the gods saying? Are they not sure?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, we're assuming he was poisoned.
Right.
So,
but never mind the poison, the one through his belly that pinned him to the ground. It went into the ground. It went all the way through him.
Yeah, there was no a pool of blood surrounding him already.
Exactly. But remember, he couldn't get up because it was the spear was all the way stuck in the ground beneath him.
Right.
So that's gone through both directions. There's no recovering from that.
Yeah. Just because he had the strength to kill Oberyn doesn't mean that he's going to survive this.
Exactly. Now, I've got to imagine that the who died first tiebreaker, which Cersei is rapidly scribbling into law as we speak.
She's the Queen Regent. She can do those kind of things.
It does probably mean it's the end of the line for Tyrion. Could the wall still be an option? I mean, we feel like Tywin has said. Tywin feels like it's not an option once he's lost the trial by combat, and Tyrion himself said, "Rapists and murderers, sure, but there weren't too many regicides up there."
Yeah, that doesn't bode well. There's not a lot of precedent there, I guess.
And then coming back to what you mentioned about the political ramifications of the outcome, this could be bad for the Lannisters in the long run because it doesn't force the Martells to crown Myrcella, but it's got to lead them to want that more than if Oberyn came back with a big smile on his face.
Right. So with Oberyn killed, now 2 Martell siblings have been killed in King's Landing with Lannister involvement. So, and I think this has a lot to do with why Tywin was so angry about the trial by combat. Once Oberyn stepped in as the other champion, Tywin's mental gears had to have been spinning, thinking, "Oh no, this is going to be bad either way."
Right, but actually, if Tywin was think about it carefully, the better result for Tywin Lannister is Oberyn Martell winning that battle. The only loser is Cersei Lannister, and she doesn't care really about Cersei.
And Mace Tyrell might be a little bit irked because Tyrion mentions that he might be upset that the man who crippled his son and just helped the man who almost poisoned his daughter escape justice,
Right, but
that's easily right.
Yes, that's a lot more easily smoothed over than what's going to happen now when the Raven arrives back in Sunspear to say, yeah. So Oberyn kind of rashly decided to defend Tyrion Lannister, who, by the way, the gods have just spoken, is a regicide, in a trial by combat against the guy who murdered your daughter.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But Doran, rather, is a pretty level-headed, cool strategist, so it's not guaranteed that he will jump to retaliate immediately. But Oberyn had already been calling Marcella Queen Marcella in this chapter. So, it certainly will create problems.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of clamour around Doran to crown her now. Just to get the Martells back to where they were. That basically, they were heirs to the throne. I mean, at least by marriage, they were heirs to the throne. Yeah. And now if they can crown Marcella, they again have the regent, or rather the consort of the queen would be a Martell.
Yeah. And at the same time, creating a civil war for the Lannisters. I'm sure they wouldn't be too broken up about that.
Right. And again, that's why Tywin would be like, what's easier for me, to placate a slightly miffed Mace Tyrell,
right,
or to face Dawn?
Yes, in a possible civil war between my grandchildren.
Right, exactly. And as a fringe benefit, my one remaining son who could breed heirs for me survives and is proven innocent by the gods. Tywin should have shouted, "Don't go anywhere near him!"
Right. Just let him die. Stand back. Don't put your foot on his chest, that's for sure. His arms stick out of his chest,
While you were waving to the crowd, I heard him say, "Yes, I did it." He was wheezy because of the spear through him. You got some background for us?
I do. It's not directly related. There was a few things that came up about some things in Oberyn's life and some things in Dorne that either we recently talked about, or there wasn't a whole lot of information about, or it's going to come up later. So
stop making excuses. Get on with it.
Well, what I came up with was a previous trial by combat that I thought sounded pretty interesting that I figured I would tell everybody about. So there was once a knight named Sir Braxton Beesbury, nicknamed Stinger, and he was a flashy, renowned young knight from the Reach during the reign of King Jaehaerys I. Braxton was a bit of a wild child. It said he fathered 2 natural-born children by the time he was 19 years of age, and he was buds with Jaehaerys' daughter, Sarah. He and Sarah rolled with a tight group of 6 young people, including Alice Turnberry, Perry-Ann Moore, Jonah Mouton, and Red Roy Connington. The group often got themselves into various amounts of trouble, and after an incident at a brothel involving the king's fool, the king began to look more closely into the group's activities. He discovered that Sarah Targaryen had coerced Alice and Perry-Ann into having sex with the 3 men of the group, and that Alice was now pregnant because of it. He also learned that his daughter Sarah had had sexual relations with all 3 men and proposed that she should just marry them all, a la Maegor the Misunderstood. He did not, neither Jaehaerys or his wife Alysanne took very well to that plan. So the 3 men were imprisoned in the Red Keep's dungeons. However, the harshest penalty was levied against Braxton. The king commanded that he have his nose and tongue cut off, he be gelded, and that his arms and legs be broken. Instead, Sir Braxton invoked a trial by combat, and when granted, the young knight asked which of the old men from the king's guard would he be facing. But in a surprise turn of events, King Jaehaerys chose himself as his champion. The 19-year-old knight planned to immediately overwhelm the 49-year-old king with a morning star, which was his chosen weapon. However, the king outlasted the young man and eventually drove his sword Blackfire through the knight's visor.
Wow, good story.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Not for Braxton, but...
No. I mean, he'd be dead now anyway.
Oh, yes. Yes, that was a long time ago.
comparison with the television show. So last time we had a Tyrion chapter, I jumped ahead on who the extra witness was. I mentioned this in the comparison with the TV show last time, thinking that the trial was done in the book and the next chapter was going to be the trial by combat. But sure enough, Shae did turn up and speak. So I sort of tipped our hand on that just a little bit. But indeed, just as in the book, it was Shae's testimony that tipped Tyrion over the edge to demand the trial by combat. In some ways, what the show did made more sense. Tyrion demands the trial by combat in a rage against Shae, and only later gets the salvation from Oberyn. Because he calls for trial by combat before he's ever had the conversation with Oberyn, and he pleads with Jaime to be his champion. But Jaime's like, I cannot defeat that guy.
Right.
Not with one hand.
Just their conversation alone is different, because so far Jaime still hasn't even turned up in a Tyrion chapter.
Right. But Tyrion actually, there's quite a funny interchange, because Tyrion says, it would be really cool if you died in the trial by combat, leading me to be killed as well, getting rid of both of my father's sons in one fell swoop. And Jaime laughs for a second, but does not agree to the plan.
That's funny, but I'm still not going to do it.
Exactly. The fight is equally fantastic in the TV show. Oberyn's death is somehow even more brutal in the show. The show does focus, you mentioned Ilaria Sand, it focuses on her reaction, horrified naturally, and she's played by the always excellent Indira Sharma, and Peter Dinklage was also excellent in this, because he runs the gamut from sort of terror of watching the battle to a rising sense of belief that Oberyn might pull this off, to elation that Oberyn has pulled this off, to the crushing devastation of that pompous idiot got himself killed.
He got himself killed.
Yeah. Pedantry, if there was any, swept away on the tide of fantasticness of this chapter. Anything for you?
No, nothing for me.
News and notes. Tony CTZ from Brazil, on our Discord server, has put a video to our first episode, which is very funny. It's very funny. I wanted to joke to him that our lawyers were going to be in touch, but that just would have fallen flat, because who cares, whatever. But also, did he have to choose our first episode? Which I've heard enough times now. It's so clunky and terrible. Couldn't he have chosen one of the funny ones? But it is a very funny thing. So congratulations, Tony. It was really good.
Yes, and I have shared it on our social medias. So go check it out. It is very humorous and well done. I thought it was. I found it really neat, actually.
Yeah.
It made our just stale, dull first episode much more interesting.
I really like the bit where we explain what we're going to do with spoilers, and he keeps on captioning it, but we keep on sort of changing what we're saying, so the caption has to change to keep up with us. It's like no spoilers. Okay, light spoilers. I thought that was really funny.
Yes, good job, Tony CTZ. And don't forget to check out our new Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tiers. We've got 4 new ones out there, and check them out. And if you can help us out, we really appreciate it. And there's some cool perks along with it.
There's a tier for everyone there.
Really, there is. There really is. That's what we were trying to do. Trade a tier for everyone.
And on the subject of our sustainers, we're going to have a live sustainer chat for our Royal Kingsguard, our Lords Paramount, and our new small council members. And that's coming up basically just after this episode airs, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Okay. so no point announcing when it happens. It's going to be very soon after you listen to this. But
yes, I think our sustainers get it Monday, and our call is scheduled for the Tuesday after. So
great. And I mean, just to tell people who aren't already in that what it is, I mean, we have a live video Q&A, and we've yet to put together an agenda for it, because we find that we just chat and have a really good time, and people come with questions or games or all kinds of things, and we just shoot the breeze for 45 minutes and have a great time.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. It's
really
always
is.
Something to look forward to, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's conclude. Oh, Oberyn, you were colourful, dashing, righteous in your contempt and anger, and you were taken from us too soon. I remember when I've said this is not the first time I've said this line, but I remember when you used to eulogize everybody who died in this book. And now
It's too
Characters
much
like
of a
Oberyn
constant.
Martell just...
I know. There's too many. It happens too often now. But Oberyn was a fantastic character. And
yeah. Of course, some of it is he was brought to life by Pedro Pascal, is it? The guy who was in The Last of Us as well. Yeah.
Right.
He was great as Oberyn, but I mean,
Agreed.
Oberyn was a great character. That's why no matter how good of an actor you are, you can't make a really lame character very interesting.
Yes, right. It takes an amazing acting job to do something with just a very boring
a line
character.
drawing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Shae, we loved you. We really loved you. At least I did. I was fooled by you. It wasn't just transactional for me, but perhaps it was for you all along.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We don't know what will happen to Shae from this point, but we may never know how she truly felt about Tyrion.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine her and Tyrion patching things up.
Yeah, it is. It really is. That's one thing that seems quite challenging to imagine.
I'm trying to think who other point of view characters are in King's Landing. Jaime, he doesn't seem interested in anyone but Cersei.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, Tyrion thinks to himself that Shae will get whatever she asked for from Cersei. So he seems to think it was more transactional than coercion, this, her testimony here. But those are just Tyrion's feelings. He's surely quite hurt.
Actually, that's a reasonable point, because I can imagine if Cersei comes to you and you know what Shae knows, you tell her what she wants to hear. Yes, I heard them plotting against Joffrey. But then I can also imagine Shae saying, if you pay me, I've got some additional information that will really hurt him.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
I can put some real color behind this story if you meet these particular requests.
Exactly.
Please.
Some golden color, if you know what I'm talking about. And Tyrion, I think the Scooby-Doo, because he's in trouble now. Again, he could go to the High Court and argue, well, in actual fact, it was a tie, the trial by combat, but everybody saw Oberyn die.
You know who could use that argument is Tywin, if he wanted to say, well, it's a bit of a technicality here,
Gray area.
We're going to send him to the wall. Because, like we discussed earlier, would Tywin really execute his own son?
Guess we'll find out.
And can he still send him to the wall? It seems like he could if he wanted to. I mean, who's gonna object at this point?
Right.
Other than Cersei.
Cersei.
Right. He doesn't seem to care much about what she has to say about things.
And Gregor Clegane must die from his wounds. I mean, I can't see if he's been poisoned, and the first two wounds, yes, he's going to survive those, but that third wound would kill anything.
Right.
Any mammal dies when a poison spear is pushed all the way through its guts and out the other side.
Yep. The mountain has survived a lot, but this seems like even too much for him.
Unless he paid a lot of attention to what Beric Dondarrion was doing.
That's right. Does he have Thoros of Myr nearby?
Exactly.
I will say that the Hound's single-minded focus on killing his brother,
may now be wasted.
It would make a quick, messy end of that storyline if the Mountain dies here, which we assume he's going to. But as we've kind of pointed out already in this chapter, Martin's not afraid to pull the rug out from under a storyline. Think of all Robb's plans for getting back to the north, of how to get through Moat Cailin and around Moat Cailin, and Kat's plans of getting her girls back, and Ned's search for the truth, all derailed by unexpected deaths. So,
I think if everybody who was about to die simply planned their funeral and last will and testament, that people it would tip you off as a reader.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They have to keep living their normal lives right up until they die. Otherwise, it's bleedingly obvious.
Yeah. Yes. That is a solid point. But, the political issues that's been created here for Tywin, it was going to happen regardless of the outcome. But like you said, this is probably the worst of the two options for
This
Tyler.
is the hard one. Yeah. I mean, the only nice thing for him perhaps is that the Mountain dies too, because he can then send the Raven to Dawn and say, hey, the guy who murdered, he even said it. Last words out of his lips were, I did all that. And you know what he didn't say? The word Lannister.
It's true.
At no point.
Yeah. It's just add another to the list of dead Martells at the hands of Lannisters, you know?
Yeah.
And I just have to say, the Seven dropped the ball again. The faith of the Seven, the gods.
I know who you mean. Tell me what you mean.
We know Tyrion is innocent. So Oberyn should have won this fight, but he didn't. So what were the Seven doing? Were they having lunch? Did they miss this? Someone should have been paying attention and said, "Oh, yeah, we need to intervene here because this guy's innocent."
I think we need another podcast to discuss whether or not the faith of the Seven is actually just superstitious mumbo jumbo. But
that would be a good podcast, actually.
R'hllor, that's where it's at.
R'hllor would have stepped in and done something here.
R'hllor would have pushed Oberyn away before he stood up. Don't stand there, you fool.
R'hllor would have sent a shadow assassin to be Tyrion's champion.
Perfect.
That would have ended it just like that.
Perfect. Who have we got next time?
We're getting back to this character in Essos, this Daenerys Targaryen. Do you remember her?
Yeah, I remember. Blonde lady, yeah. Got it.
Yeah, she was stuck outside of Marine trying to siege the walled city. We'll see how that's going.
Well, while we cross the narrow sea, there are 4 ways that you can help us out. You can leave us a positive review. There's no better way to spread the word. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. Get something for the holiday season. Buy a cup of Arbor Gold or at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. Become a sustainer at any of the 4 new levels that are available to you and enjoy the perks associated therewith. Or you could just donate directly to the cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us and keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube. And you're especially going to want to do that to check out the video of our first episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.